I want to shift now and go on to the Democrats. Let's talk about them for just a minute. Just to recap, Senator Sanders with over 60% of the vote, Secretary Clinton under 40%, Sanders with 13 delegates, Clinton with 9. Okay, a very major win, a major win for Senator Sanders, and one that has the Clinton campaign on their heels in terms of trying to address their basic strategy and looking at things. It's never good in a political campaign after 2 contests to be going back and rethinking and perhaps even changing some of your campaign staff as you go forward. For whatever reason, I would argue that Secretary Clinton just has failed to catch on with the same amount of charisma and attraction that Senator Sanders has. And his energy, his staying on message, his refusing to budge in terms of talking about specifics, but being very general, has generated a lot of interest. And she has been the one that has not been able to deal with this. In essence, I think you have to look at least to this point in the Democratic primary, that it has been a battle between the liberal and the moderate wing of the party, and in both New Hampshire and in Iowa, the more liberal wing of the party has won out. Now, going to South Carolina for both of them, very important test. And actually, I would argue that what happens in South Carolina may be a bellwether of the rest of the campaign. The Clintons have argued, Secretary Clinton has argued, and the Clinton campaign has argued that when you get into more diverse states, states that have higher percentages of minorities and low-income people, that in fact she will dominate. That remains to be seen. Okay? And clearly for the Clinton run to the White House, she needs a strong outpouring of support among the black voters in South Carolina and along with the Latino Hispanic voters there. Same way in the Nevada caucuses. If she doesn't get that that turnout in South Carolina, her campaign will be in further difficulty, and I think that Senator Sanders would be in much better shape going into the March 1st primaries, but especially the March 15th primaries. So this looks at this point as if this could be a long trip to the nomination, but it may not be because Secretary Clinton simply may not be able to recover. So let's listen at their 2 speeches, and I think with Senator Sanders' speech, which is the longest of the evening, I believe a little bit over 29 minutes, you hear the same sort of messages. So you might wonder, why does he take 29 minutes? I would argue one of the reasons is he's got a national audience, okay? And he's trying to make sure that his message is understood. So he's using it not only for a victory speech, but he's using it really as a campaign speech, and he's repeating his similar positions. So let's go and listen to this for just a minute.
We serve notice to the political and economic establishment of this country that the American people will not continue to accept a corrupt campaign finance system that is undermining American democracy, and we will not accept a rigged economy in which ordinary Americans work longer hours for lower wages, while almost all new income and wealth goes to the top 1%. I want to take this opportunity again to congratulate Secretary Clinton and her organization and supporters for waging a vigorous campaign. I hope that in the days ahead we can continue to wage a strong, issue-oriented campaign and bring new people into the political process.
Okay, so there you hear the stress on his major themes: rigged economy, the need to get more people involved, and also a reference to the Clinton campaign, in essence putting them on notice that I'm going to go forward with an issue-oriented campaign. We hope that you do. If you don't, you bear the consequences of going back to some sort of negative campaigning. So I think it's important for you to note 29 minutes, almost 30 minutes for the speech by the senator. The emphasis clearly resonating his campaign, clearly resonating that he's prepared to go on and be a vigorous fight. Also, though, indicating that the important thing is that the Democrats elect a president in the fall. So he's still leaving the door open that in case he doesn't get the nomination, he's probably prepared to support whoever that nominee would be. And the expectation would be if he doesn't, it would be Secretary Clinton, although in a week or so I'll have another lecture up in which I'll talk about various scenarios that the Democrats may face as we go forward. So now let's listen for a moment and finally to Secretary Clinton.
And I want to say, I still love New Hampshire, and I always will. And here's what between paying rent and buying medicine because a prescription drug company increased the price 4,000% overnight. And it isn't right that a cashier that I met here in New Hampshire, son, is paid less than her son for doing the same work, even though she's been on the job for more years. Now, people have every right to be angry. But they're also hungry. They're hungry for solutions. What are we going to do? And that is the fight we're taking for the country. What is the best way to change people's lives so we can all grow together? Who is the best change maker? And here's what I promise. Here's what I promise. I will work harder than anyone to actually make the changes that make your lives better. In this campaign, you've heard a lot about Washington and about Wall Street. Now, Senator Sanders and I both want to get secret, unaccountable money out of politics. And let's remember, Citizens United, one of the worst Supreme Court decisions in our country's history, was actually a case about a right-wing attack on me and my campaign. A right-wing organization took aim at me and ended up damaging our entire democracy. So yes, you're not going to find anybody more committed to a...
Okay, so you hear Senator Clinton's message, more or less saying it's time to take the campaign to the country, and that the issue is not the difference between them. The issue is who can get things done, which candidate can get things done. And she argues she can. So again, she's stressing experience. We know in the first two primaries, in the Iowa caucus and the New Hampshire primary, that message resonated, but only with individuals who were longtime supporters of Secretary Clinton, especially women over the age of 50, 65. That is not going to be sufficient to carry her. So she's going to need to try to broaden her base. 85% of the younger voters are voting for Sanders. She has to figure out some way to not only mobilize those voters, but get those voters out for her. So she has an interesting task ahead. And again, it comes down to what groups have not been involved so far. And I would argue largely they've been Hispanic Latino voters and also the African American black vote. And we'll see what happens as you go to South Carolina and then the week after, with March 1st, with that extent of primaries. So very interesting, a lot to learn. A very good way to analyze a race is to go back and listen carefully for what the candidates have to say. I did not have the opportunity to play Governor Christie's comments. It appears, although it's not certain, but it appears that he is contemplating dropping out of the race at this point, or perhaps dropping out and coming back in later. So we'll come back and talk about that in the next lecture. So take a few minutes, go back, look at these snips that I have for you, the segments that I have, and see what conclusions you might draw that would be different from those that I've drawn. Thank you very much.